Hello, and thank you for joining us for the Pando Days 24-25 Spring Term Project Premieres. My name is Eugene Shirley, President of Pando Populous. Pando Days is the program that turns academic work into real-world solutions for impact in your community and world. All Pando Days premier events follow a standard format. Each team is given 15 to 20 minutes to present summaries of their projects, followed by roughly 30 minutes Q&A from a panel of experts. These events are recorded. Then over the summer, the recordings, along with all project materials, are posted on each team's dedicated webpage to be found on the pandopopulous.com website. The projects then are judged by a distinguished panel of specialists with honors and prizes passed out and networking opportunities galore happening at the Pando Sustainability Awards in the fall. Stay tuned for details. Today, we're hearing from UCLA Extension. Their project sits close to home for Pando, where it ecologically reimagines the 11-acre campus where Pando has its office, a compound that includes extensive meeting and retreat facilities and is owned by the Sisters of Social Service based here in Los Angeles. Let me tell you just a brief word about the sisters because it will put things in context. They have long provided support to some of LA's most underserved people. They are legendary for their history of radical commitment globally. In Hungary, during the Second World War, they protected more than 1,000 Jewish children from certain death, even as their local community's head and others who were members of their community were executed for the work that they had done by the Nazis. Now at their headquarters campus in Encino, they are looking to extend their tradition of radical commitment to the earth and all living things in light of Pope Francis's vision of integral ecology. And UCLA's Extension Landscape Architecture program is helping them do that. The 80 student team group is led by Professor Stephanie Landrigan and includes Professors Tom Rao and Pamela Brief. Stephanie, Tom, and Pamela, so wonderful to have you here with us with an absolutely fascinating project. Stephanie, we're eager to hear more.
All right, let me share my screen here. All right, so thank you very much, Eugene, and other special guest. I'm Stephanie Landrigan. I'm the director of the Landscape Architecture program, and we're going to address some of the activities that we have been doing with our students at the Holy Spirit Retreat Center. And I am not being able to share there, pardon me. So today we are going to have first me present about our charrette, and I will tell you more about that. Then we'll have Tom Rao talk to you about his class in shrubs, which also was focused on the site. And finally, Pamela Brief will discuss how the planting design is part of what we are continuing to do on site. So an annual charrette occurs, and this is a full day in which our students come and they analyze the site. They have pre-charrette materials, some of the research that is done by our 7th team, and they walk on site. It's all in situ. We have the 7 teams, and they are led by the 3rd-year students, which are capstone students. And we had a total of 76 students participate this year, along with 7 advisors. So our charrette program was given to the students, and it was with a vision to celebrate the natural processes, expose the spirituality of the site and the space through interconnected ecologies, supporting biodiversity. There were 6 sections of the 11 acres, and the key principles we looked at, and not all of them are in each one, but fire resilience, stormwater management, biodiversity, protecting it, how to efficiently use water. So the day culminates in a presentation of every team. So within this day, they come up with a design. They present a whole series of supporting evidence, and then the other teams all see what they've done. After this day, we put together a booklet. This is a condensation of that booklet because it's also in the supporting materials, and we would be here too long if I presented the whole booklet. So I'm showing a summary of the work that our students did today. So many of our students, they run from ages of 20 up to 50, and some of us are more than 50. So, but we work together, paper and pencil, computers, each of us taking our skill sets, coming together to create a team that works with community. So we had we had 6 teams that were there. The 7th team was our pre-charrette team that did all of the work that then became a common element of each team. So I'm going to start with team A. Here's a picture of our team members. And we started off by every team looks at the site location. So it's really important to know that there's a residential surrounding this center of 11 acres along with a school. And so how does this fit in within the community? We also looked at the watershed analysis. How is water running on this property? It's topographically challenged. We also looked at the early history, the social context, talking about the sisters, talking about the previous work that was the Biophila treehouse, and the early history of the sisters and some of the Native American peoples. We looked at what were the flora, what are the existing trees. We looked at what are the existing residents besides the sisters on the property. And then we also looked at the tree cover because the tree cover is important, first of all, because of the topography, stabilizing slopes, understanding stormwater, adaptation. Also, shade is important, but also fire resiliency is an important issue based upon the property. We looked at the circulation. We had both vehicular circulation and then we had pedestrian circulation. We looked at certain, I would say, natural phenomena. What is the sun in the summer? What is it in the winter? What are the prevailing winds? I'm sorry, I didn't spell check this for them. What are the sounds that we hear? And then each of the teams came up with their own concept plan. And this is the concept plan for the first group. And it looks at areas that they want to look at, how they're going to do it, whether they're going to connect it, whether there's drainage or not. This is the concept plan that came from group A. As you can see, there's a focus on the pond. There's a focus on a new circulation system. Highlights of elements here that are actually, I'm going to have to encourage you to look at the booklet because there are many supporting pieces that go with this. I am just going to share the final concept plan with you all. This also deals with the circle, which is a fire access, and each one of the groups does a terrific job of looking at different ways of utilizing this site. Charrette team B dealt with the fact that they wanted this to be spiritually oriented in context with the sisters. Here's my team B group. And some of the drawings they did ahead of time just to see what is going on. And their final plan is a little different. Each of these were done in one day by this group. So that's important to realize that it's not as detailed as it would be if this was done over a different time frame. This one focuses on different ways to use areas that are not here. It's putting in cisterns, looking at a volleyball cart, adding a little activity here, looking at other uses that aren't here. How can we deal with, interacting with the pond in a different manner? Then we go on to our next team. Here's team C. This one focused on the Tongva historical landscape and how we might be able to incorporate some of the native peoples Act stewardship into their design. What happened here is many of these students looked at how they're going to deal with the topography. So they wanted a grand entry. They wanted to deal with some retaining walls so some of these hillier areas could be used and also be ADA accessible, how to deal with passive recreation, how to deal with the retention and swales, looking at other areas, solar covered carports, how we can incorporate more, because the sisters actually have probably the largest solar array in LA County right now. And so adding to that would allow a lot of use back here that is right now just an uncovered parking area. And then what they looked at here is some of the zones and how they could easily be reattached to each other. So Team D, here's my little Team D group. They looked at the circulation of whether we should be coming in here, because this is a very tight circulation area, and it exits out into this private area, and then it comes back and onto Lanai Road. But right now it's very, very unattractive. So what if we created a new kind of, I'd say, access? And that was the solution here. What happened is they looked at what could be used here. They need an event space that would then take you more into our, I would say, the urban canopy that's on site. And if you come in, you would take a long drive that would be relaxing, almost like the Ford chamber of calming you down, coming into the sacred place. And so here's our little circulation. Now we're going into our other group here, which is the Team E. As you can see, Tom's involved with that. They then had 3 ideas: creating for the now, creating for the future, and looking at the legacy, looking at the roots. Their concept diagram was very rich, looking for wild habitat, how to do outdoor classrooms, what is the outdoor activity spaces and that we can look at. And this is their final solution. They dealt with the grotto and made it a meditative space. They wanted to fix the leaks and naturalize the perimeter and create a waterfall, dealing with more access ADA here, and then also dealing with some gardens in the areas that are sunniest. Now, so this is a different use of the space than what was proposed by other students. This is a close-up of their compliant boardwalk that brings you in and out from the area here, so you don't have to go through the others. It's very hard to get down here otherwise. Naturalized edging, and then either a raised garden and citrus trees in the sunniest area. Team F dealt with, there they are, cute little Team F. Team F dealt with redesigning this in a way that you will see. They've created an amphitheater over here. They've actually created in the spiritual garden up here a little more, I'd say, order to it. It attaches to the labyrinth over here. And then what happens over inside in the area that is the turnaround for the fire, they did a little more detail work. So I am at the end of our synopsis, because I highly recommend you look at the booklet, because each one of these is detailed far more than I could go in this amount of time. So I would definitely like to thank you all for this, some of our students continuing to work together. And I'm going to turn it over to Tom. And Tom, just tell me when to change it, and I will change it for you.
Fantastic. Thank you, Stephanie. So just prior to the charrette, the students took my Plant Studies 2 class. And next slide. Plant Studies 2, actually, I think there's one just before this. There we go. Plant Studies 2 is one of 3 required core curriculum classes in the program that deal with plants. The first Plant Studies 1 focuses on trees. Plant Studies 2 focuses on shrubs, and then LD5 planting design, which Pamela teaches, focuses on design. Next slide. In Plant Studies 2, the students learn over 200 medium-scale plant materials, such as shrubs, vines, ground covers, and succulents and edibles. They learn how to create cohesive plant communities that meet site-specific design objectives. And they learn how to select plants that are ecologically compatible with varying site conditions in any location. Next slide. The assignment at the Holy Spirit Retreat Center was to come up with a plant palette, a big idea that reimagines the grounds and the landscape as an immersive, healing, and nourishing garden. That garden was to be used for contemplation, meditation, reflection, Tai Chi, and yoga. And they need to plant, harvest, and share fruits and vegetables grown on the premises. Next slide. The deliverables included 3 plant lists: a plant list for a healing garden, which included trees and shrubs and ground covers of different sizes. And most importantly, they had to select plants that had sensory, spiritual, medicinal healing, or cultural significance in which the visitor can immerse themselves while healing their mind and body. Next slide. Next slide. There we go. The next list was for a nourishing garden, which included citrus, stone fruit, apples, other fruits such as figs, persimmons, and pomegranates, as well as leafy greens, vegetables, and fruiting crops. And they had to get specific about the trees, the forms, whether they're dwarf or espaliers, whether or not they require cross-pollination. Chill hours, which are important for stone fruit, and encino is a low chill area. And they also had to specify the ripening times. Next slide. And lastly, a planting list for if you go back one, Stephanie, for a human and wildlife friendly water feature pond that include trees and shrubs for birds to safely perch on, and aquatic plants, and also provide plants that can tolerate splash around the water feature. Next slide. And most importantly, they had to come up with a written narrative describing their big idea. That is to include inspirational images and collages and sketches to convey their overall design intent to the client in a very succinct manner. Additionally, they provided recommendations on soil preparation. Next slide. Irrigation, whether to use the existing system or replace it, and maintenance needs. So once they put that whole package together in my class, then they took all that good background study information and they then went into Pamela Brief's class to actually design the space.
Hi, everybody. The class was so thrilled that they got to prepare this wonderful palette in Tom's class and then take this into planting design in LD5. Next slide. This shows the curriculum required to your core curriculum, same as Tom's. Obviously, Tom's class plants came before, and the class that precedes mine is LD6 concept development. Next slide. In this class, the objectives are building on skills that they've already developed previously, their first half of their second year, and preparing planting design presentation drawings and also construction document level drawings. They're creating designs based on the principles of composition and environmental factors, along with programmatic elements, and using the design principles such as form, scale, texture, and color in their designs, and also choosing palettes that are horticulturally appropriate for the specific site conditions. And we also tend to call this like right tree, right place, or right plant, right place. Next slide. So we're also reinforcing the understanding of the essential role that plants play in providing human comfort. We all understand this. We're increasing their depth of biophilia and helping them understand and manage the conflicts that exist between land stewardship, appearance, cost, maintainability, and the public health, safety, and welfare. Next slide. Just to remind you, we were asking the students to create an immersive, healing, and nourishing garden. And one of the things that we talked to them about was, don't forget your big idea. That wonderful big idea, high concept that they developed in Tom's class was going to totally guide them through this design process. They completed a bubble diagram showing structural plantings such as screening, where accent trees might be, how circulation was going to flow, both pedestrian and vehicular, through their space, and taking into consideration those major programmatic elements that Tom had already given them in the prior class. We created what we call bubbles inside of bubbles. These bubbles start to delineate high or tall shrubs, medium height shrubs, and low shrubs, so that they're now, this bubble inside a bubble is creating a hierarchy of the plants before they start to identify which plant might go in which place. Next slide. After they complete their bubble diagrams and bubble inside a bubble, they're using their plant palette to begin to locate plants. Next slide. The final design package included that big idea, a preliminary layout, a planting plan, and an oral presentation. Next slide. This is an example of Zoe's. Zoe Morans is one of our students, and she prepared the celestial garden. I'll take this through you briefly, no pun intended. Next slide. So Zoe's big idea or design statement is based on the celestial garden. And this celestial garden is based upon the Sisters of Social Services, welcoming people from all denominations. Zoe suggests that we are united in this big giant solar system, regardless of our spirituality. And she invites us to consider, what is the celestial garden? And how can a garden help the visitor simply exist and be surrounded by spirituality that is materialized by plants? Next slide. Zoe goes into a fabulous site analysis that also gives you little windows into the existing site. We talk a lot about graphics in this class and how to communicate your ideas and your analysis. She did a great job. Next slide. Conceptual design, those bubbles that I talked about early on, and circulation are shown in this, showing the physical versus spirituality and her bubble layout. Next slide. Then she goes in design precedents. Students often pick inspirational images that reinforce their big idea. You can see how this feels very celestial and very spiritual. Next slide. And then through weeks of looking at sun patterns and slopes and all sorts of site conditions, Zoe comes up with 3 very important key elements and key zones within the project. First is the Vital Springs, which is the water garden. 2 is Constellation Cove, which is the healing garden. And 3, the living garden, which is the edible garden. Next slide. This is an example of a plant schedule that all of the students put together. Next slide. And the water garden, the Vital Springs, as she calls it. Images of plant material that could be used. And Stephanie, you can kind of just keep going through at a clip and I'll follow along. An enlargement space that shows more detail of plant material, and images with me in the foreground. A water garden specific plant schedule. And now we're into the healing garden, the Constellation Cove. Images of the existing site and plant material that could be sprinkled throughout this lovely garden. an enlargement showing more detail, showing trees and shrubs that that develop this wonderful cove, and an image showing what that might look like with pollinators abounding. We jump into our legend, and then we will jump into the living garden, edible garden. These are existing images and some of the vast amount of trees and food that will be supplied in this lovely garden that the sisters can share with visitors. You see an enlargement again of the planting with terrace beds, espaliers, and the citrus garden. The legend, and that wraps it up. So I thank you very much for giving us the time to talk to you today about the charrette, about Tom's plant class, and then how the students finalized into a detailed planting plan in my planting design class. Thank you very much.
And thank you all. I just want to wrap it with saying that we have 2 more classes that are going to go further in depth with the retreat center. Tom is going to be teaching our stormwater management class, which will also be a hands-on class. And we have our irrigation class is going to be on site too. We're going to be looking at the irrigation and ways to improve that. So we are really excited about the time we have spent at the retreat center and the time we will, and being part of this amazing revisioning of a biophilic innovation center. Thank you so much. Stop.
Well, thank you, Stephanie and Tom and Pamela. Fascinating. It's the campus out there is, of course, absolutely beautiful as it is, but I can't wait to see it become more sustainable in these kinds of ways, more beautiful, absolutely, and more reflecting the kind of vision that Pope Francis represented when he was alive, and that the sisters represent of what he would call integral ecology. So extremely exciting. With us today are Rebecca Schmidt and Elaine Kim. Will be commenting and discussing the project, and we hope it's just a general conversation among us all. Rebecca is a member of the Pando Board of Directors, a long time, and is its secretary treasurer. Her background is as an executive and entrepreneur with deep experience in businesses from early stage startups to the Fortune 50. She has a track record in heading up successful launches, audience growth, brand building, turning big ideas into something that makes a difference in the real world. And so that's why she's always been just a perfect fit for what Pando's all about. In 2015, she was named one of Folio magazine's top women in media. Elaine is a fashion designer and master gardener who divides her time between designing luxury fashion items with sustainability in mind while working hands-on for natural ecosystem and native plant restoration. She is a longtime member of the Theodore Payne Foundation. Elaine and Rebecca, thank you both so much for joining us today. Rebecca, you've been through this before, so why don't you kick us off here with a discussion, and then Elaine, you can feel free to join in, and we just have it as a discussion among everyone here on the screen.
Thank you.
Rebecca.
Okay, I'll just jump in. First of all, wow. I'm just impressed with the scale of what you tackled. 76 students, 7 whole teams, how many different classes you have included in the education aspect of this. So it leaves me wanting to see your book and really dig into the fun part, the detailed designs. It's unfortunate we didn't have enough time to go deep into any one of those, because that would be a whole lot of fun, but we'll get that from the book. So I do have a couple of questions. How did you give these 7 teams? It seemed like they took a bite at the apple, so to speak, from a different perspective. Some from circulation or involving the Tongva history, or activities or garden, were they given these focus areas, or did that come naturally within each team?
Actually, we gave them many options, and once the team gets together, they have to negotiate what they're going to do. So there was a group that was very much into the Tongva stewardship legacy and wanted to incorporate that. There were other students who truly, we had a woman who's an event planner, and she really kind of guided that team into doing areas that could be event spaces and how do you deal with that, and circulation. Some of the students are hikers. So it really depended on the makeup of the team and the team leaders. They all had to put together their ideas. So they start at 8 in the morning, and by noon, they have to have enough ideas together so they can start the final drawing. And then they have to color it. As you can see, not everybody was able to color it. But so what they do is they may not actually get a huge variety of solutions. So they often focus on one solution and how do they make it work. So yes, they were individually negotiated in each of the 7 groups.
Wow, it's very impressive. And I imagine that negotiation process was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
As it always is. I'm wondering, did the students have any interaction or involvement with the sisters or any input from them?
Actually, they did. The sisters kicked off the day and spoke to the students. I wish we had had more time to have interaction with the sisters, but they did do a lot of research on the sisters. So you saw the historical elements. They shared that. Each of them prepared themselves for understanding. Not, and you know, it is a Catholic order, and not everybody understands the sisterhood, the novitiate, what the mission of the women who serve the church are. So that was an education for them. And that, and they were kind of intrigued by the fact that the sisters wanted to be so ecumenical. I think the majority of the students were truly, I think, expanded in their understanding of what the serving sisters are in the Catholic faith.
Very cool. And then I find it's interesting for most of these projects. There's a balance between the creativity, what you call the big idea, that think outside the box and just make something amazing, versus the practicality of making a design or a solution that can really be done in the real world. How did you guide them through that dilemma or that choice, and how did they respond to that?
Well, I'm going to let Tom answer that. Tom was one of the advisors. I was also an advisor, but I think that is a good question. So, Tom, I'm going to kick the hard one over to you.
Sure. No, it's an excellent question. It's sort of a process transformation. You start out with big ideas and think outside the box, and you whittle it down, and you get consensus on which way to go, and you create that conceptual plan. But the next step, and this is actually what I'm going to be doing next quarter in stormwater, is to be able to do an overall analysis of the site. And then the assignment for the students will be then to distill that down, elements of that stormwater plan, into realizable, small, bite-sized pieces, if you will, that can be constructed in a workshop. So it takes them that next level. You start out with a big idea, you refine it. And this is real life. This is just like what happens in real projects. You come up with all these wonderful ideas, and guess what? The budget gets cut, or they have value engineering, or the timeline doesn't permit it. So we always, as professionals, have to be able to deal with that kind of transition and understand what it takes to make it make it doable. And given the fact that this is a nonprofit, this is a community organization, there's not a big bucket of money out there to spend on hiring contractors and permitting and all that kind of thing. So these types of interventions, whether they be planting fruit trees or building swales to move stormwater or hugelculture, building rain gardens and stuff, can all be done with volunteer work over a long period of time and set up educational experiences. So, and I think it's a really good challenge for the students to go through that, but you don't want to stifle that big picture creativity, at the beginning. So that's kind of the long answer to a tough question. So I hope that makes sense.
It is maybe the tough question, and after a few years of seeing these presentations, you find teams that go a little too far one way or the other. Sometimes they're just so, pie in the sky, impractical, wild. Maybe they've gone too far there, and then others, maybe could have been a little more ambitious. So I think it's a very important thing for these projects. So, Elaine, I don't want to take up too much time, so
No,
why don't you
I'm
step in?
okay. So I am actually blown away, really, because a project like this with an organization that's sponsored by the Pando populace, I really believe that this is such an amazing collaboration of restoring, an urban space and how much can be done to, for the future as well. And my question, just after after I'm very impressed, and is will this project will these things be implemented, executed? Does it require funding? Does it already have funding? It's just, I'm coming at it from a little bit of place of ignorance, how this works.
I think that's a Eugene answer.
Okay, well, I was
Okay.
about to pass it over to you, Stephanie, but wondered if you wanted me to step in. Yeah, so the Sisters of Social Service, as I said at the introduction, there are partners for our offices, etc. And they, like many communities of women religious around the country, are reimagining their campuses, reimagining their properties. Many of them are aging out. Very few women are becoming sisters anymore. And the sisters here see this property as being in service to the county, and that they are caretakers on behalf of the county for this kind of purpose, and see the vision of integral ecology that I've mentioned here with Pope Francis, see that vision as the appropriate vision for this. But then how do they bring those principles down to earth at this location, which they believe then will also be able to strengthen it as a retreat for people who, because they have extensive retreat facilities there. We have our office there, and there others can use it in various ways for events, retreats. We use it for project acceleration, that kind of thing. And so then with the funding for this kind of thing, the sisters, they of course they've been here in LA for 100 years, and so they are a well-established organization. But as you can well imagine, there would be a fundraising challenge that would be associated with this, and this has to be planned as well. The sisters are extremely interested in the broad philosophic vision, but have yet to be presented these ideas specifically, and that's something that we'll coordinate with the UCLA team to present these specific ideas, and then to also plan what that means in terms of funding and all. But one thing, to echo what Tom had said earlier, that I'm excited about is that, I mean, there's such beautiful ideas, but so many of them, from what I've seen, are things that volunteers can, without a great budget, could actually get out there and just do, you know. And so that's extremely exciting. Betsy is going to be heading up the volunteer corps for out there.
Okay.
And yeah,
Yeah,
so yeah,
that actually, you reminded me of two things. One is that, of course, you do need the funding, and yes, for a project like this, you would need volunteers and donations and whatnot of plant material and all of that. But also that if you create a functional, attractive space that you can use, that can be rented out. It is a business. It's a business. To this is to follow Rebecca's concerns. It all starts with having the right, creating the right space that then would attract people. And then from there, you could parlay that into many things. I mean, and that is truly exciting because from what I know, and I'm very anxious to visit this property. But the sisters were very early in getting on board with the native plants, and that truly tells me how generous and really far seeing, perhaps you might say. They're prescient because this is the best legacy that they can leave us. The county, uh, and I do want to also comment on the, as you know, I'm always going to bring in the native plant angle, but I personally am a very avid edible gardener, and that's where the UC Master Gardening Program comes in. And the work that I feel that I need to see done, and I will jump in as much as possible, is the relationship, is how beneficial native plants are for edible gardening, for crops, because of the pollination, because of how alive the surroundings can be. So a few of those projects touched on the edible, and I think that that's great because you can have both, and both will support each other. And that's a great, great thing to absolutely inspire the community when they come to visit, when they have their retreats. This is a very educational. There's nothing like being in the space and experiencing, and that's learning, teaching.
no, absolutely underscores the need for direct educational outreach to accompany this as
Right.
well. So people can have the
And a
context.
possible follow-up question would be then along this thread, was there uh, much direction given to try to use as many native plants, or was there pressure put on? Which
Well,
I,
Pamela,
Yeah, I'll answer that one.
yeah.
If it weren't for the fact that our cohorts are so involved and interested in native planting, yes, there would have been a push by us, the instructors, but like we don't need to twist anybody's arms. Our cohorts are so inspirational. I mean, just that they've grabbed the importance of natives and are so interested in learning about them. They all know Theodore Payne, like the back of their hand, and you've probably run into them at one time or another there.
Yes.
And so it's really exciting to see such enthusiasm in our students for a sustainable and resilient design in all of them. I mean, the list of, ceanothus and manzanitas and poppies and companion plants for, how they all work. They're so into that. So it's really exciting to be their instructor.
Wow.
and, and share my knowledge of natives as well, because that's, yeah. I am a big plant nerd. So.
Yes, great, great, great. And then I know that the trend, I mean, even in the way that my interests have sort of evolved is from the edible to the native and now to the watershed. And I know because that is really all roads will lead to that. And those the fact that the landscaping program that you run there at UCLA, the design program, it's that deep. It goes into the taking account of the watershed. And we're going to have to do that if we're going to be resilient against fire, if we're going to have healthy native plants that are well hydrated. There's so much right now in urban settings where the water runs straight out into the sewers.
Mhm.
And I mean, that's kind of the next, okay, after the native thing, we have to talk about groundwater, what do you call it, absorption?
Yes.
Recharge.
Recharge, we must. And the indigenous peoples used to use those where it sprang up and there was such an abundance of groundwater. We were known for natural springs and things like this. Again, tying it to healing. I mean, it's just so incredible to me, this project, because the starting point of it is healing. And yes, nature heals. It's so circular. It nourishes not just by growing food. That's just almost too easy. It nourishes in so many other ways. So yeah, the watershed thing, isn't that difficult to incorporate into these projects?
No, not at all, actually. And
Oh,
that's a matter of fact what we're going to be doing next quarter in stormwater management,
uh-huh.
with a heavy emphasis on indigenous water harvesting practices. With focus on infiltration and combinations of native plants, because you can't do stormwater management without proper planting. They work hand in hand together. You have to be
Right.
able to build, retain water, and then plant the appropriate native plants so that the roots then absorb the water and create what we call sponge. And
Right.
that's really what
And
it comes
Tom,
down
wouldn't you
to.
say that we can't, wouldn't you even say that we can't really have healthy native plants without the infiltration? Because so
Yeah,
many of the oaks,
yeah,
when they fall over, it's because they're not well hydrated because they can't get the water out the way they
yes.
used to.
That is correct. And coast live oak is actually a riparian tree, believe it or not.
Uh-huh.
It needs that water, but planting and stormwater go hand in hand. And that's
Yeah.
really what we're trying to teach the students to understand.
Bravo.
And when we do stormwater, we're not pouring concrete swales and filling them up with rocks to create a sterile bathtub. We're creating living ecosystems, sponges and there's many, many ways to do it, either through hugelkulture or Berman Basin, using other indigenous practices that you can build yourself, either with a bobcat or even a crew with shovels, simply
I
by
need to
pumping
take that
water around.
course.
Well,
I need to take your class.
it's available.
Yes.
I think I have 8 students signed up already, so it
Oh
is
my
available.
gosh.
And we will be spending quite a bit of time on this project, but you'll be learning the basics, and how to implement these kinds of practices. And but you're absolutely right. And also too, one more thing about, the native plants, the students do a native plant palette in my plant studies class before they did this edible garden. And we bring in Carol Bornstein to do the lecture and present the material. So they are just very much up on it. And most of them already have quite a bit of plant knowledge already. And of course, it leads into the spiritual and indigenous practices of using these native plants for healing and medicinal and understanding all those connections. So they're very aware of that.
Right.
So
And I just also think it's a little bit artificial to say edible and native because a lot of the native plants are edible
Yes,
and
they
people
are.
actually subsisted on it. And that's a
Right.
whole rabbit hole, the whole other thing that's fascinating that black walnuts really need to be eaten,
Yes, they
for
do.
instance. Anyway, marvelous. It's very moving,
Mm.
incredible. Thank you so much for this opportunity to peek in.
Mm.
Thank you, Betsy.
I just make one other comment too in terms of implementation, just for what it's
Eugene, we
worth.
can't hear you.
I was going to say, over to you, Tom.
Yeah, just we have a minute or two here. I just one more, comment about implementation stuff. There are many educational nonprofit groups out there that could be approached to be brought in, and just groups like working with California Native Plant Society, other gardening clubs, but also there's funding out there through various grants, particular environmental grants and stormwater, maybe even LA County sanitation. May even have some opportunities. And I think particularly given that the site is a community amenity, an important one, that it would certainly be given, high consideration for whatever funding is out there in order to purchase plants and if certain work has to be done by contractors or that kind of thing to pay for some of these improvements. So if you know any grant writers or any people that are good at this kind of thing, I think that would be a really good asset to bring to the team.
I do know a good grant writer, and his name is Chat GPT.
Yes, he is very good.
He not
Ooh.
only writes well, he does. It may be a she, I don't know, but incredible research. So if you could just type, if you just type in what grants are available for, it'll give you many more ideas than you even thought. And then you could say, how would how would that be written, constructed? Give me three outlines. It'll give you three outlines in 20 seconds. So anyway, I'm
That,
sure you're already ahead of me.
Well, I want to add to the implementation. And right now, the 7 different designs, when they're presented to the sisters, we can see what of those designs, what parts of them might really inspire them and be something they would like to be in sync with. Right now, there's a lot of different information put out there. We have very talented students. It was a 1-day event. And so we're really hoping that we might have another opportunity to refine that. And once that's refined based upon the actual conversation we're going to have with the convent and the sisters, it can be refined, but right now it's still just aspirational and inspirational and not implementable yet.
But it's, yes, absolutely. But the wonderful thing is it's so inspirational
Mhm.
that I can almost guarantee that inspiration is going to lead to implementation. It's,
Mhm.
yeah. And also, I'm so excited about the fact that your class, Tom, and yours, Pamela, these are going to be following up, the next.
Mhm.
It's a wonderful
Yeah.
demonstration of how that can work. And that's really the
Yeah.
core of what the Pando methodology, education methodology is all about, is get ideas out of the classroom into the real world. And part of that is to be able to have a series of classes continuing to feed in so that things get pushed to the point to where they really are ready to make an actual difference. So this is extremely
Yes.
exciting. I'll have to say, I also love the idea of directing traffic the other way. I think that's it.
You liked that very much.
It's simple, but it's a brilliant uh idea. I also love the idea of doing something with that fire truck turnaround that
Mhm.
right
Oh,
now is
yeah.
just empty. These are presumably simple kind of
Yeah.
things, but they actually shake things up a lot.
Mhm.
So
Yeah, and
pretty
that
cool.
upper area where the students did their planting plans, those planting plans are such that those are very implementable plans. So the larger scale, obviously, harder to bite off that, conceptual master planning at this point. But the areas that they dialed into for the planting specific class, planting could start whenever there's money.
You got to
Okay.
remember the pollinators and the fabulous little honey production.
Yes.
We've already got a little tiny honey thing, which is so good. I would love
Yeah.
to do that.
I didn't get any that day. I forgot to
Yeah,
get
me
them.
neither.
have
I
to do
think
that.
Betsy bought the last of it.
Sorry.
Okay, next time I'm out, I'll
Expand
put your
that part of the property.
I'll
We
put
need
your
bee
names
volunteers.
on a
So
jar.
Betsy,
Sounds good.
you're going to come with me on a tour of the property.
Absolutely. I will
I'm
guide
so
you to every
excited.
nook and cranny.
Okay.
Terrific. Okay, well, thank you all so much. This has been a wonderful conversation because of everybody here, and what a really wonderful project, and one of these that's far more than than the nuts and bolts of putting it together. I mean, it's a
Yeah.
big project that be very valuable, extremely important, and you can see it actually moving forward. So thank you all for everything you've done to make that a real possibility. Our next premier event is tomorrow, May 30th at noon. We'll be hearing from California State University Northridge on another of their projects. CSUN has been very ambitious with Pando Days as well as UCLA Extension. So thank you all again. Pando on.